The Nebraska Cornhuskers hosting the Colorado Buffaloes, Big Ten Saturday night on NBC. The eyes of the nation are going to be on this matchup as Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffaloes bring all that hype after squeaking by North Dakota State into what will be an absolutely raucous environment in front of yet another sellout crowd in Lincoln, Nebraska. Boy, this is going to be an incredible atmosphere, and I think that this is going to be a really, really good football game that everybody's going to have their eye on. Can Nebraska win a marquee football game? I know Colorado won just 4 games last season, but we know that hype train is coming into Lincoln, Nebraska. Whoever comes out on top in this particular matchup is going to be riding that hype train here the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe the rest of the season as well. All right, let's dive into this matchup. Let's start to break it down a little bit. I think there's one big key for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and it's when the Huskers are on the defensive side of the ball. I look at both of these teams, 85 through 85. Nebraska has a much deeper team. Nebraska has a much more complete team. But Colorado can still hang with them. Colorado can still win this football game because of their star power at the top. When I look at this Colorado football team, it reminds me a lot of when in the summer of 2010, when LeBron James left the Cleveland Cavaliers to join the Miami Heat. You had LeBron, you had Wade, you had Bosh, you had that super team, that super group at the top. But what happened when you got beyond that big three? All of a sudden you got a lot of Joel Anthonys and Udonis Haslams and Mario Chalmers and guys like that. And this Colorado team is very similar to that. You've got a lot of star power at the top. Sheduer Sanders, one of the very best quarterbacks in college football. Whether you love him, whether you absolutely despise him, you cannot deny his talent. You can also not deny the talent of Travis Hunter, the two-way star on the outside at corner and wide receiver. There is a tremendous amount of star power at the top of Colorado. Now you get beyond that star power, you start to get some question marks. More on that in just a little bit. But Nebraska needs to limit big plays down the field. Nebraska needs to find a way to contain the combination of Sheduer Sanders and Travis Hunter. You look at Colorado's season opener against North Dakota State. NDSU was able to hang with them, but the difference in that football game was Colorado's ability to create explosive plays down the field involving this combination. And we saw it last year. Okay, when Sheduer Sanders was one of the most hit and contacted quarterbacks in the country because of a porous offensive line, when you're able to disrupt Sheduer, when you're able to disrupt the passing game for Colorado, you can have a lot of success against the Colorado Buffaloes. So if I'm Tony White, if I'm drawing up a defensive game plan in this game, I look at them and says, this isn't a great run game. Okay, if the throw game isn't working, they can't all of a sudden go to the well and go to this run game, whether it's Dallin Hayden or whoever it is in the backfield. They can't all of a sudden go to that and say, hey, we're going to pound the rock. Because Nebraska has a tremendous advantage in the trenches on both sides, but we're talking about their defense. On the defensive line versus Colorado's offensive line. So they need to find a way to keep those big plays in check. Not only the big deep passing plays where the ball goes 30 yards or 40 yards in the field, or down the field, but also those short passing concepts where they try to get Travis Hunter or Jimmy Horn on the other side, where they try to get them in space. 3, 5, 7 yards separated from the nearest defensive back, and Travis Hunter can be real slippery. Jimmy Horn can catch the ball and run with it and create 15, 20, 25-yard chunk plays down the field. That's what they need to be able to tackle in space. That's Colorado in a nutshell. Get it to our athletes and let them put up some points. If that is contained, or if they can't do that, Colorado doesn't have, more bullets in the holster, so to speak. That's their bullet. Now, their bullet's pretty darn good. It's a very high-level bullet when you talk about it in college football. So Nebraska's ability to be able to contain that is a key for them to be able to walk out of Memorial Stadium with a big marquee victory when it comes down to it. North Dakota State in that season opener against Colorado, they were able to push around this Colorado team and kind of flipping over now to the other side of the football. This is a defense that, is the offensive line Colorado improved a little bit? Yeah, sure, you could say that. Is the defense improved a little bit? Maybe, but this is still a defense that Nebraska, they can push them around. Okay, North Dakota State, they can push them around. Nebraska can do that up front. And when I look at Nebraska on the offensive side of the football, considering what Colorado's defense is, man, I look at that game against UTEP, and I saw not one, not two, not three, but 4 running backs able to get into the game and be productive. RTFB is printed on a t-shirt sold by our good buddy John Johnston over there at Coordination. I'm going to replace the F with maybe another letter of a word that is very familiar to Nebraska fans. Run the damn ball. Run the football up the middle. Colorado can't stop you. They can't. Nebraska has a tremendous advantage in the trenches. And I think the key is maybe not necessarily leaning on one of these guys, although I think almost any of these guys could have a really big game. Keep these running backs fresh. Expose the depth that you have and the depth that they don't. I started at the top of this preview. I said, they've got really high-end talent. Colorado has better high-end talent at quarterback and some of the Travis Hunter, right, than Nebraska does. But once you get down to the rest of the 83 guys, Nebraska just plain and simple has more depth and they have better depth than the Colorado Buffaloes, Nebraska running the football, whether it's Dante Dowdle, whether it's Emmett Johnson, whether it's Ramir Johnson, whether it's Gabe Irvin Jr., the ability to wear down Colorado, hands on hips. You want to see those hands on the hips of Colorado defenders mid-third quarter, late third quarter, early fourth quarter. That's when you know that you have done your job. Colorado's defense. I wish I could take credit for this stat. I can't. I was watching some CBS sports programming earlier in the week, and I got to give them credit for this one. Colorado's defense has given up 400 plus yards in 10 of the last 13 games. In last year's game, it was all about turnovers. Nebraska was able to move the football down the field early in the game, but missed field goals and fumbles did them in, and then Colorado was able to just run away with it in the second half. If this team is able to protect the football, I mentioned their physicality up front in running the football, and then Dylan Raiola over the top. I can see this clear as day from many miles, country miles down I-80 through the heart of Nebraska. Run, short pass. Run, medium pass. Run, deep ball. I think this is a game where Jalen Lloyd is going to get a big play. We didn't see Jalen Lloyd in that game against UTEP, but he has some track speed down the field. He has the ability to get over the top. When Nebraska is able to pound the rock and run the football and exercise their depth and continuously stay fresh in the run game, and Colorado's like, we got to dedicate resources. We got to bring up guys. Dylan Raiola throws an absolutely gorgeous deep ball down the field. And Jalen Lloyd can outrun probably anybody on the Colorado secondary. I think that's the key. Establishing the run game is going to open up Dylan Raiola's ability to push the ball down the field. And the more you're able to run the football, the more you're able to control the line of scrimmage and control that time of possession. It keeps the one threat of the Colorado Buffaloes on the sidelines. And that's Sheduer Sanders, and that's Travis Hunter. The less they can be on the field, the less opportunity that the Colorado Buffaloes have to win this football game. Like, I look at the depth of Nebraska at some of these positions. Now, when you look at offensive line, when you look at quarterback, when you look at wide receiver, when you look at running back, do you see some of the best players at their respective position in the Big Ten? I don't. There's better offensive lines than Nebraska in the Big Ten. There's better running backs in the Big Ten than what's at Nebraska, wide receivers. But now there's good to really good players, and there's a lot of them at those specific positions, specifically running back and wide receivers. Johnson, Dowdell, Irvin. I talked about that at the running back position. You look at wide receiver. I think this is a Nebraska team that now has legit threats down the field. I talked about Jalen Lloyd, but of course, those first two guys, Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks. I got a feeling that Travis Hunter is going to match up against Isaiah Nair. I think that's going to open things up. I mentioned Jalen Lloyd down the field. Jamal Banks, I think, could have a good big game down the field as well. Ja'Cory Barney, Janarian Bonner, Bullock. How about true freshman Carter Nelson, right? Was a tight end, moving to wide receiver. You got him involved a little bit in that UTEP game. I think there's going to be certain players and certain things that Colorado's defense is going to key in on. And you're going to see big plays down the field. You're going to see big plays made by maybe not the stars on this team. Maybe not the Thomas Fidonis at tight end. Although, even if they do clue in on their wide receivers, I think the tight end could certainly have a big game. Like you talk about mismatches. Thomas Fidone, I think, is a mismatch, not only for Colorado, but I think for a lot of teams that Nebraska is going to face this season. So I think you're going to see the depth on display at the wide receiver position. I think you're going to see the depth on display at the line of scrimmage. Like when I look at Nebraska defensively, when you look at Nash Hutmaker, when you look at Ty Robinson, just those two guys alone and those big bodies, I think they're going to be able to blow up Colorado's offensive line a good amount. Now, Colorado's success is going to depend on their ability to protect Sheduer Sanders. Sheduer was one of the most hit and contacted quarterbacks last season. Okay, their ability to protect them and keep this Nebraska pass rush at bay is going to be key in their ability to move the football down the field. Because if Nebraska can get in the face with that front three, okay, that's the key. I mention it all the time. A defensive coordinator's dream is to be able to get pressure with your defensive line. If they're able to push back and at least shrink the pocket for Sheduer Sanders throwing the football, that's going to be beneficial because they've got very experienced players back there in that secondary to be able to defend this thing over the top. Will Dylan Raiola really emerge onto the national stage if Dylan Raiola is able to outduel Sheduer Sanders, get a victory in this particular football game? Can you just imagine the attention that is going to be on this true freshman after this game? I think he's going to have, at the very least, a good day. I think that this is a Nebraska team that's maybe going to be more focused on being physical and running the football. But I think Nebraska has a very good, there's a reason that they're a 7.5-point home favorite. And I think a reason for that is the balance of this offense, the balance and depth of this football team, Dylan Raiola's ability to push the football down the field. I could see certain aspects and parts of this game where Dylan Raiola puts together consecutive completions, medium passing, short, long, whatever passing concepts it is. And now, you got guys across the formation, and now they run the football, and huge run lanes open up. I just see a more complete team for Nebraska in this game. And I just, maybe I'm buying in and drinking the Rhule-Aid early in the season, and maybe it's just another year. But I just think there's something different about Nebraska. I think the thing that's different is Dylan Raiola. Compared to other teams, right? Nebraska has had good players. Didn't say great players, but they've had solid to good players on teams these past years. But I think Dylan Raiola and that high level of quarterback play is going to make all the difference, and it makes everything around this Nebraska football team better. This crowd is going to be absolutely electric. I think that plays into another advantage that Nebraska has in this football game. But if Colorado is able to hit 3 or 4 big plays down the field and turn them into scores, they can keep this game close. Sheduer Sanders has proven that if this game is close down the stretch, that he has the ice water in his veins to be able to make big plays and lead winning drives. We saw it early in the season last year. So he can do that. If you contain that star power at the top, I think the Nebraska Cornhuskers come away with a big-time victory in this football game at Memorial Stadium on Big Ten Saturday night. You've heard my thoughts on this gargantuan matchup on Saturday night between the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Colorado Buffaloes, but it's time to welcome in one of our team experts, Justin Adams, also known as the H-Town Husker from Nebraska Live at the Voice of College Football, a contributor as well to 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln as well. What a matchup we have here, Justin, this Saturday night. I am so excited. Everybody's looking at Michigan, Texas at noon, but I'm really excited to see what happens at Memorial Stadium in Lincoln. I've been thinking about this week, man. I would just love to feel that energy around Lincoln in that town here this weekend. But here's what I want to start with you on. What's the confidence surrounding this fan base right now that Nebraska can get out of that great atmosphere on Saturday night with the victory over one of their big rivals in Colorado?
Yeah, I think this is the most confidence that I've seen in our fan base just coming into a season in a long time. The energy for the UTEP game, from what I've heard from people who have been in the program, around the program for a long time, even for that game was an energy that they haven't felt in that stadium in a while. And that, just further proves. And then coming out there, Raiola, showing what he showed and, being able to come out there composed, poised, and be able to just kind of sling it, just like he, kind of like he did in high school. It just seemed like he was effortless with the throws and stuff like that. So it seems like the confidence is very high coming into this weekend. One of the things that scares Nebraska fans is when the college football world is picking them to win, because that's when typically things go wrong. So that's the only concern right now, is that the rest of the world's picking Nebraska.
Nebraska, 6.5-point favorites here in this matchup against the Colorado Buffaloes. When a lot of people, you talked about all of those experts picking Nebraska to win, I think a big reason why they expect them to win is because of what's happening in the trenches and what's happening with the Nebraska run game. Man, this running back room can go four starters possibly deep in this running back room. Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Oregon, Ramir Johnson, Emmett Johnson, Gabe Irvin Jr. as well. Is there one of these backs that really stands out to you that could possibly have a breakout performance against this Colorado defense that has been susceptible up front?
Very much so. I have a ton of confidence in Emmett Johnson. Emmett Johnson's been, my guy throughout the offseason, who I thought was the best running back. He ran, he came up through injuries last year and was able to step up, and even in stacked boxes against an offense that couldn't pass, he was able to roll out, average 4 yards a carry, and keep that running game rolling. Gabe Irvin and Ramir, of course, went down early in the season. So it was basically down to Emmett, Quentin Ives, and guys like that. And this year, though, we added Dante Dowdell from Oregon, top 10 running back in the 2023 recruiting class. And, he showed himself well in the first game, very physical, very hard runner. He's a big guy. He did have that fumble and didn't see the field after that. So, Matt Rhule's being very strict on turnovers this year. It's not acceptable. And especially in that running back room that's so deep, because we had 4 oars on the depth chart. It was Ramir or Emmett or Gabe or Dante Dowdell. And so I think there's a potential that they could interwork Gabe and Dowdell a lot in this game plan, just because they want those big physical guys to be able to run into that, the heart of that defensive line and kind of wear them down. But I think they're going to, I think Emmett's going to finish the game with the majority of the yards. And I think he's going to be able to spring loose a few times on that Colorado defense. I didn't show really much of a run defense last week.
When I looked at this tape for Colorado when they played North Dakota State, when you think of NDSU, I lived in Fargo, I worked in Fargo. That was my first job for 2 years covering NDSU football. It's as physical, it's as Big Ten-ish of a program, traditional Big Ten-ish of a program that there is at the FCS level. A lot of people, and over the years, that has been a run the football type of program. But you look at what Cam Miller was able to do, throwing the ball, some more spread concepts from this Bison team this year. I think it showed of what Dylan Raiola could do. Do you have faith that Dylan Raiola can spin it to some of these receivers? They can hit some big plays down the field against this Colorado secondary.
Absolutely. And what Dylan Raiola just has to do is, he doesn't have to go out there and be a world beater. He just needs to protect the football. And if he can do that and we flow off the running game, his life is going to be made so much easier, because once the offense is balanced out, he's going to have open guys. And we've seen his ability last week to find the open guys and even throw some guys open. When he did, make, an incomplete pass, he typically left it out of harm's way. He tried to fit it in a couple tight windows, but, the ball was never really in danger. And like I said, he was able to kind of throw some guys open and do some things that we haven't been able to see from this team before. And that's really going to put strain on this Colorado defense, because not only now do they have to work against a wide receiver core that has the likes of Isaiah Nair and Jamal Banks, who they didn't see last year, but then you have the guys like, your Jalen Lloyds and all that mixed in there as well. And so it's just going to be very hard, I think, for them to kind of contain both of those. I think they're going to have to pick their poison and try to hammer in and stop one. And I know their secondary has talent and has upside, but they really didn't show it last week. And in the middle of the field, the linebacker, they look kind of slow. Their eyes were undisciplined at a lot of times. And that's going to work in Nebraska's favor schematically, because they're going to be able to dial up a lot of things, NFL style. We have Michael Terry's a 5-star number 1 athlete out of the state of Texas, who commented on week 1, and he said they do a everything NFL style. And that's the positionless 49ers style of offense they want to run. And they're going to really stress this Colorado defense a lot, and they're going to wear them thin, and they're really going to make them step up and have to be physical to have any chance in this game.
Boy, one throw I remember Dylan Raiola making in that UTEP. He's kind of working his way to the left, changes the arm angle. I can't remember exactly when it was or whatever, and he just puts it. He's kind of throwing off balance this way, and he just puts it right there. And I'm like, this is what we need. This is kind of what Nebraska fans really wanted. Let's move to the other side of the football. Of course, the super team at Colorado that they've assembled at the top with really those players, the Sheduer Sanders, the Travis Hunters. You could throw in Jimmy Horn as well. Nebraska needs to be able to slow that down. I talked about it here just now before I brought you on, that's what they need to really focus on. You can't allow those big plays over the top. Who do you expect matching up with against Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn? And who do you kind of expect to really key in on those guys to try to limit what they can do?
Yeah, I think, Tommy Hill, of course, is our number 1 corner. I think Tommy Hill is one of the most slept on corners in football. He last year, coverage-wise, he graded out with the likes of Kamari Lassiter and Kool-Aid McKinstry in terms of his overall coverage grade. And he was top, 15 in that category. And now he's put on 20 pounds. So he can also run stop. He can be physical. So he's going to be that matchup with him and Hunter is going to be very interesting. Hunter is, a generational talent. I won't deny that he is one of my favorite players to watch in college football, albeit he does play for Colorado. And Sheduer is excellent. Horn's excellent. I'm not taking anything away from those guys. But, with John Butler, our defensive back coach now coming in from, the Buffalo Bills, I think we're going to have a good game plan to really work on that. Marquez Buford and Malcolm Hartzog, Malcolm Hartzog is going to be out there, trying to kind of bracket these guys as well. I think they're going to have to do a mixture of man and zone. Yeah. And, the thing is too, the rover, Isaac Gifford, is going to be very, very important, because his job is all over, right? Gifford's the all-around type of guy, and we really need him to be locked in, which he is probably one of our best defenders, not in the defensive line-wise. He's going to be huge in this game to kind of be there, in the middle to kind of help bracket some of these, these routes across the middle. And really, the Nebraska's 3-3-5 defense and the 3-3 stack is designed specifically for an offense like Colorado. You remove a defensive lineman, replace that with a defensive back so you can keep up with the team's speed. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit this weekend.
I'm very curious exactly how they defend, and you kind of mentioned some things, man versus zone, and who's kind of going to be matching up. I remember on Sunday night watching that USC-LSU game, and I'm like, man, these LSU receivers are getting over for these 10 yards a pop, 12 yards a pop. But as I kind of watched that game a little bit more, and I'm like, Danton Lynn is kind of a genius. He's not letting anything over the top. And that deep ball down the field and those big explosive plays is really what drives Colorado. I'm very curious to see how Tony White might scheme some things up to keep everything in front of this Nebraska defense, make some tackles in open space, and that could certainly propel Nebraska to a victory. What would a win in this game? I mean, there's so much attention. There's so much hype. coming into this game. And these are maybe games in the past where Nebraska has fallen a little bit short. What would a win in this game say about this program and where they're at for this season?
I think this is the type of win, like, even though, albeit it's a 4-win Colorado team, right? I just think the hype and the fact that it's, NBC national televised game, primetime, all eyes are going to be on this. Nebraska hasn't won a game like that in so long. And I think it doesn't matter the opponent. I think just winning a game like that, especially in a rivalry game that's expected to be close, I think that changes the entire energy and feel. Like, we saw how kind of the media started to really come around in Nebraska after the week 1 win versus UTEP. Now, if they go out and they, handle Colorado, if they cover the spread, Rhule mania is going to take off, and Nebraska Husker mania is going to take off, and we're going to be that annoying team that everybody is going to like to hate again, because we're going to be insufferable on Twitter. The fans are going to be insufferable, but it's going to be massive. It's something that this program has needed for the longest time, and I think it cements that Matt Rhule is the guy. And that I think, I heard this somewhere else, and I agree. For Nebraska to prove that they've taken that next step, this is the type of game they have to win this game. They need to win this game to prove that this team has kind of turned that corner. Insufferable on Twitter. You said it, not me. The Husker fan here said it, not me. So we'll see what happens at the end. Can't wait to see this one go down on Saturday night. Justin Adams from Nebraska Live at the Voice of College Football, as well as 93.7 The Ticket in Lincoln. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate you.
Thanks for watching Big Ten TED, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten TED to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.